I never thought I'd be sharing this story. My name is Hannah Miller, and what I'm about to tell you changed everything I understood about life, death, and the choices we make. This isn't just another near-death experience. This is a warning, a revelation about the final moment that awaits each of us. That crisp March morning started like any other. The sun was just peeking over the horizon as my husband Nelson and I began our familiar hike up Cedar Ridge Trail. We'd done this trek dozens of times before, but something felt different that day. Maybe it was the unusual stillness in the air, or perhaps it was God's way of preparing me for what was about to happen. "The view is going to be spectacular today," Nelson said, adjusting his backpack as we climbed higher. I remember smiling at him, taking in his familiar profile against the morning light. If I'd known what was coming, I would have memorized every detail of his face in that moment. We were about 2 hours into our hike when it happened. The loose gravel beneath my feet suddenly gave way. Time seemed to slow down as I felt myself falling backward. I heard Nelson's terrified shout, saw his hand reaching for me, but I was already tumbling down the steep incline. The world spun in a kaleidoscope of sky and earth, and then everything went black. What happened next would reveal truths about our eternal destiny that most people aren't prepared to hear. I was clinically dead for 23 minutes, but where I went and what I experienced felt like an eternity. The doctors would later tell my family it was a miracle I survived the severe head trauma and internal bleeding. But the real miracle was what Jesus showed me about the choice, the final choice, that determines everything. The moment my consciousness left my broken body, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I found myself in what I can only describe as a vast space of pure light, yet somehow I could see perfectly. The physical pain was gone, replaced by an awareness so acute it made our earthly senses seem dim in comparison. That's when I heard it, a voice that resonated through every fiber of my being. It wasn't audible in the way we understand sound. It was as if pure love had found a way to communicate directly with my soul. "Hannah," the voice said, and in that single word, I felt more loved and understood than I had in my entire life. I turned, and there he was, Jesus Christ, exactly as Scripture describes him, yet somehow more real than anything I'd ever known. His presence was overwhelming, but not in a frightening way. It was like finally coming home after being away for so long, you'd forgotten what home felt like. "My child," he said, "there is much you need to see." With those words, everything around us shifted, and I began to understand why I had been allowed to experience this. What happened next is difficult to put into earthly words, but I'll do my best to explain. Jesus showed me a series of visions, not like watching a movie, but like living multiple lifetimes in what felt like both an instant and an eternity. I saw people making choices, ordinary, everyday decisions that seemed insignificant at the time, but each one was creating ripples through eternity. "Watch carefully," Jesus said, and I saw a businessman choosing to ignore a homeless person on his way to work. In that moment, I could feel both the man's rationalization and the deep spiritual consequence of his choice. Then I saw the same scene again, but this time the man stopped, bought the homeless person a meal, and took time to listen to their story. The difference in the spiritual reality was staggering. It was like watching two entirely different universes unfold from that single moment. "Every choice matters," Jesus explained, "but not in the way you might think." He showed me how it wasn't the action itself that carried the most weight, but the heart behind it. I saw people doing seemingly good things but with hidden pride or selfish motives, and others making mistakes but with hearts genuinely seeking truth and love. Then he showed me something that shook me to my core. I saw countless souls arriving at their moment of death, and I witnessed what I can only describe as the final choice. This wasn't what I had always imagined judgment would be like. It wasn't a listing of good deeds versus bad ones. Instead, each soul faced a moment of perfect clarity, a complete understanding of God's love, and their response to it throughout their lives. "This is what people don't understand," Jesus said. "The final choice isn't made in a single moment at death. It's being made in every moment of life. But at the end, each soul sees the truth with perfect clarity and makes their final decision with full understanding." I watched as soul after soul faced this moment. Some, upon seeing God's perfect love and their own lives in its light, turned toward it with joy and relief, even though they had struggled or made mistakes in life. Others, who had appeared outwardly religious but had harbored darkness in their hearts, turned away, not because they were rejected, but because they rejected the light themselves. What terrified me wasn't God's judgment. It was seeing how our own choices, our own hearts, create our eternal destiny. Every small decision in life was like practice for this final moment. Those who had consistently chosen love, even imperfectly, naturally turned toward God's love at the end. Those who had consistently chosen self, pride, or darkness, even while maintaining a religious facade, found God's perfect love unbearable. Jesus then showed me something that brought me to my knees, though I didn't have physical knees in that state. He revealed how every interaction we have with others influences their ability to recognize and choose God's love. I saw how a simple act of kindness could soften someone's heart, making them more receptive to God's love years later. Conversely, I saw how our harsh words or actions could harden someone's heart, making it harder for them to recognize and accept God's love. This is why I said, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me," Jesus explained. Every soul's eternal destiny is interconnected with others in ways you cannot imagine. I was shown how modern life has created new challenges for souls. The constant distractions, the endless pursuit of comfort and entertainment, the digital walls we build between ourselves and real human connection. All of these make it harder for people to develop the spiritual muscles they need for the final choice. "Tell them," Jesus said, "that every moment is preparation. Every choice is practice for the final one." He then showed me something that fills me with urgency to share this message. I saw how many souls, even those who considered themselves Christian, were building their lives on shifting sand. They said the right words and performed religious rituals, but their hearts were far from God's love. They were like the foolish virgins in the parable, thinking they were prepared but lacking the oil of genuine love and relationship with God. "The time is shorter than they know," Jesus said, and I felt his deep sorrow for those who were not ready. But this wasn't about fear or condemnation. It was about love. The same perfect love that some souls would find unbearable, others would recognize as what they'd been searching for their entire lives. I was shown how this final choice worked with perfect justice and mercy. Those who had never heard of Jesus or had been taught wrong things about him weren't judged by their theological knowledge, but by their response to the truth written in their hearts. I saw souls who had lived in completely different cultures or religions recognize Christ's love instantly because they had spent their lives responding to whatever portion of truth they had known. What breaks my heart is seeing how many people today are making choices that will make it harder for them to choose love in that final moment. Every time we choose bitterness over forgiveness, judgment over mercy, self-righteousness over humility, we're practicing for the wrong choice. Every time we choose to look away from someone's need, to preserve our comfort instead of reaching out in love, we're making it harder for our souls to recognize and choose God's love when we see it in its fullness. Jesus showed me how the enemy has twisted our understanding of what matters. "Many focus on the wrong things," he said. "They debate doctrine while ignoring the widow. They judge others while their own hearts grow cold. They build bigger churches while neglecting to build bigger hearts. I saw how social media and modern technology, while neutral in themselves, often become tools that train us in the wrong direction. We practice snap judgments, quick dismissals of others, and the cultivation of carefully curated false selves, all habits that make it harder to choose authentic love when it really matters. The most beautiful thing Jesus showed me was how simple the path to life really is. It's not about getting everything right or never making mistakes. It's about the direction of our hearts. Every time we choose love over fear, forgiveness over resentment, giving over taking, we're practicing for the final choice. Every time we admit we're wrong, choose humility over pride, or reach out to someone different from us, we're developing the spiritual muscles we'll need. I was shown how many people think they're good Christians because they've said a prayer or attend church, but they've never really practiced choosing God's kind of love. Then I saw others who might seem far from God by religious standards, but who regularly choose love and mercy in their daily lives, and how naturally they turned toward God's love in their final moment. Jesus impressed upon me that this message isn't meant to frighten people into heaven. That's not even possible. Fear can't prepare you for a choice based on love. Instead, this revelation is meant to wake people up to the importance of how they're living right now. Every decision, every interaction, every response to others is shaping who we're becoming and what we'll naturally choose when we see perfect love face to face. I was shown how some souls, upon seeing God's perfect love, experienced it as painful fire. Not because God changed, but because they had become so opposed to love that its presence was unbearable. Others experienced that same love as perfect peace and joy. The same light that melts wax hardens clay, and our choices in life determine which we become. What makes this so urgent is that we don't know when our final choice will come, but even more importantly, we don't know when our last chance to influence someone else's ability to choose love will come. Every interaction could be the one that helps someone else recognize God's love when they see it in its fullness. Jesus showed me how many people waste their lives arguing about religion while missing opportunities to practice and share real love. He showed me how others build up impressive religious resumes while their hearts grow increasingly unable to recognize and receive genuine love. "They honor me with their lips," he said, "but their hearts are far from me." I was about to ask more questions when everything began to fade. I felt myself being pulled back, and I heard Jesus say one last thing. "Tell them there's still time to practice choosing love. Tell them every moment matters." The next thing I knew, I was back in my body, surrounded by medical equipment and the concerned faces of doctors and nurses. Nelson was there, holding my hand, tears streaming down his face. I later learned that I had been clinically dead for 23 minutes before they managed to revive me. The doctors called it a miracle that I suffered no lasting brain damage despite being dead for so long. They were amazed by my recovery, but they couldn't see the deeper miracle. The complete transformation of my understanding of what this life is really about. Since that day, I see everything differently. Every interaction, every choice, every moment carries the weight of eternal practice. When I'm tempted to respond with judgment or anger, I remember what I saw about how these choices shape our souls. When I see someone others might overlook, I remember how every act of love or indifference creates ripples through eternity. I'm not sharing this to scare anyone, though I understand why the truth about our final choice might seem terrifying. I'm sharing it because we all need to know that we're practicing for something more important than we realize. Every day, in ways big and small, we're either training our souls to recognize and choose love, or we're practicing something else entirely. The most beautiful thing about what Jesus showed me is that it's never too late to start practicing the right choice. Every moment is a new opportunity to choose love, to practice turning toward the light. Even small choices matter. Choosing to really listen to someone instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. Choosing to forgive instead of holding on to hurt. choosing to help even when it's inconvenient. Some people might dismiss this as just another near-death experience, but I know what I saw. More importantly, I know how it has changed how I live. Every day, I try to remember that I'm not just making choices for today. I'm practicing for the most important choice I'll ever make. If you're reading this, please understand, you're practicing for something too. Every choice you make is shaping who you're becoming. Every response to others is training your soul either to recognize and choose love or to turn away from it. The final choice isn't just one moment. It's the culmination of all our choices. There's so much more I could share about what I saw and learned during those 23 minutes. But the most important thing is this. It's not too late to start practicing choosing love. It's not too late to start preparing your soul for the moment when you see perfect love face to face. Every moment, every interaction, every choice is an opportunity to practice turning toward the light. I pray that sharing this helps someone understand the eternal significance of their daily choices. Not to live in fear, but to live in awareness that we're all preparing for something more important than we realize. May we all learn to practice choosing love so that when we face our final choice, we'll recognize the love we've been practicing for all along. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about the direction we're choosing, the person we're becoming, one small choice at a time. In the end, that's what will matter most. Not what we claim to believe, but what our choices trained us to love.